Okay, so let's jump into the first step you need for this point line homework assignment. After you've gone into your environment and you've looked for examples of point and examples of line, you're now going to save them all on your computer and open them up in Photoshop. And remember, to open them up, you're going to go up to File, Open, select them all, and you're going to have them all open up as tabs here. The next step is going to be to crop your images. And I've asked you to crop them all to a specific size of 200 pixels by 200 pixels with a resolution of 72. So let's go over those steps. The first thing is select the crop tool right over here. Go to your options bar and where you see in the drop down WH resolution with height resolution and type in 200 px 200 px 72. And that automatically gives me a preview of what this would look like with this crop at 200 by 200 with a resolution of 72. But I can move this around because maybe I don't want my point, for example in this one, to be right in the middle. Maybe I want to see what it looks like if my point is down at the bottom. Because I find that the location of the point or the line, where it is, changes how it activates or doesn't activate the background space. So remember, in this assignment, for points, you're looking at, do the points pierce or pucker? Do they look like they go in or stick out? And then the second thing you're looking at, do they activate the space around it or do they help make it passive? And it's kind of subjective, so you probably won't have any wrong answers, but it's what I want you just to start thinking about. If I'm happy with this crop, I'm going up here to my options bar, and one thing I want to note is you may have delete cropped pixels on. I'm going to turn that off and I'll show you why in a second. And if I think this is the way I want it to look, so this part here that's outside of my bounding box is going to get cut off, I'm going to simply double click inside and I get my crop. And now I'm only viewing my image at 19%, so it looks really tiny. But if I take my zoom tool and I click on it until I get back up to 100%, this is the actual size. And I kind of like the way it looks with my point down here at the bottom. But if I want to see it again and keep moving it around, I can take my move tool, the top tool here, and because I didn't actually cut away those pixels at the bottom, I still have them there and I can still kind of move this around and experiment. Okay? So that's pretty straightforward. With your other ones, you would do the same thing. I'll just do one more, and then I want to show you the perspective crop tool. So I hit crop, and I still have the setting of 200, 272. I also could make this smaller because I shot this image with a camera that has a lot more resolution. I'm not going to really damage my image in terms of having Photoshop add pixels for me if I make it smaller. But just don't do this. Don't make it super, super tiny because then Photoshop ends up having to add a lot of pixels for you. So I will be explaining resolution more in other videos, but for right now, the general guideline is just you can make it a little bit smaller than this preliminary crop it gives you, but just not too much more. All right, so maybe I want it there, and I'm going to kind of move it around. Maybe I want this half a point, or I don't want any of the point that was there, kind of also here at the bottom. This time I'll hit delete cropped pixels just so you can see that, and again I'm going to double click and then I take my zoom tool and I'm going to move in until it is at 100%. And if I'm unhappy with this, remember I have my history panel and I can jump back to the way this was originally, or I can go back to my crop state. And this time if I wanted to move it around like I did in my last example, I can't because I cut off the cropped pixels. So in general, when I'm working with the crop tool, I don't have the delete crop pixel option on, just so I always have that option. Now I want to show you one more thing. I'm going to take a different image here, if I find it. This one is quite crooked. So I have my crop tool. The reason I can't get rid of this until I just choose another tool, then it goes away. So as soon as I select it, it still has that setting, and if I wanted to change it, next time I'm using the crop tool and get rid of this setting, I would just hit clear. And I got rid of that, and I could go choose back ratio or a different one of these settings, but now I have to put that back. 200px and 72. So another feature while you have your crop tools, if you put your cursor out on the edges, you see how you get the rounded double arrows? That means I could rotate this. So that could be kind of useful in an image like this that was shot and is a little bit crooked. So I'm rotating and I have a grid there that kind of helps me figure out how to line my images up. And so I could do that, and then I double click and I see my crop. All right, so that's pretty helpful. It does a pretty good job, but I'm going to just undo that and show you the perspective crop option. So I want to zoom out. I'm going to right click, say fit on screen. I was on my magnifying glass when I did that right click. And by the way, the magnifying glass can zoom in, but if you go up to the options bar, you can switch it to a zoom out tool as well. All right. And on a Windows, the keyboard shortcut to be able to do that switch back and forth is the Alt key. That will take me back and forth. And one more shortcut, if I'm zoomed way in, I'm really zoomed in, and I want to be able to move around in this space, I can take my hand tool, or keyboard shortcut is the space bar, and I can use that to move it around. But so for right now, I just want to be able to fit it on the screen. So this time I'm going to hold down the crop tool and I'm going to take the perspective crop tool. Now I'm still keeping in here 200 pixels, but 200 pixels with a resolution of 72. And I'm going to make just like a preliminary click and drag down with my cursor, making this like preliminary crop or selection really over the space I want to include. But this time I can take the edges, so these anchor points, and I can drag them out to follow the lines that are in my image. And I want them to be parallel. It's not driving with me. I want them to be parallel with the lines that are here. Let me just move this one. I think I have to move my options bar up. Okay, so I have this line is parallel with this piece of wood, and if I wanted to kind of get a little bit of the background, I'm just going to move it out a little bit, but just keeping it parallel with that piece of wood. And same thing over here. Just trying to keep that line. And now I'm going to double click and it's going to straighten it and fix the perspective for me. So this may or may not be something you would need to use for this project, but it's certainly very helpful to know about, a great feature from Photoshop. All right, so go through all of your images and crop them down 200 by 200 with a resolution of 72. Just double click, and then in the next video we'll go over how to copy and paste them into a new document.